Hello and welcome to latest TV news. My name is Jacob Panons. I'm a reporter for Sussex World, and I'm going to be speaking with sports reporter Sam Morton about Brighton's impressive victory over Manchester United, as well as their upcoming Europa League fixture. But first, who are your top stories from across the county?
Turn the engine off. Open the window, open the doors, turn it off. Take your seatbelt off.
A man has been jailed for 3 years for attacking a woman who was walking her dog in Eastbourne in broad daylight, police have said. Police said Lewis Wood, 29, grabbed the woman from behind before assaulting her and pulling her to the floor at around 2:25 p.m. on Saturday, February 25th in Hampden Park. A Sussex police spokesperson added that CCTV footage showed Wood, of no fixed address, creep through bushes before running back to his car after the attack just over a minute later. He appeared before Lewis Crown Court on August 18th and was sentenced to 3 years in prison with an extended 2 years on licence after pleading guilty to intent to commit a sexual offence and non-fatal strangulation at an earlier hearing, police said. The judge also imposed a sexual harm prevention order preventing Wood from committing further sexual offences, according to officers. Police said the court heard that just 5 minutes before the attack, Wood had been calling and texting a sex worker asking for sex in exchange for money. Police said Wood was arrested less than 20 minutes after officers received a call from a witness who came to the woman's aid. Wood's car was spotted by officers half a mile from the scene, and both a mobile phone and cable ties were found inside, Sussex Police added. A man charged with causing death by dangerous driving following a collision near Bexhill in which a Hastings boy died has pleaded guilty to the charge, police have confirmed. Russell LeBeau, 34, of the Devonshire area of Eastbourne, appeared at Lewis Crown Court on Thursday, September 14th, and will be sentenced on November 2nd, police confirmed. He had originally pleaded not guilty to the charge at an earlier hearing in May. Harry Dennis, 11, who attended the Hastings Academy, died as a result of the injuries he suffered in the collision in Hoo last December. Officers were called to the scene on the B2095 at around 3:05 p.m. on December 15th, following a collision between a car and a flatbed van. The ambulance service attended and Harry was airlifted to hospital with life-threatening injuries. He died as a result of his injuries on December 17th, police said. A school in Eastbourne, which opened back in 2021, has received an overall effectiveness rating of requires improvement following its first Ofsted inspection. The inspection of the touring school in Larkspur Drive was published on September 8th, with the Swale Academy's Trust School also receiving a requires improvement rating for the quality of education. The school, which opened in the former site of Causeway School, did receive a good rating for behaviour and attitudes, personal development and leadership and management. In the report, it says some students' reading skills are not yet fully developed, but the school has introduced a robust programme to change this. Inspectors also said that the uptake of modern foreign languages is not high enough, and the number of pupils taking the full EBAC is below government aspirations, although leaders are putting in the effort to highlight the benefits and to change this. Attendance was also identified as a significant issue in the report, but the school was praised for improving and adopting recommendations from the National Attendance Strategy Team. A spokesperson from the school said it has put in place rigorous strategies to address areas that need improving. A woman's body that was discovered on a beach in Seaford has been confirmed to be a person who fell into the water while travelling on a ferry. Hampshire and Isle of Wight police said they were contacted on July 23rd following concerns for the welfare of Ebla Yusuf. The 48-year-old was believed to have fallen into water while travelling on a ferry from Portsmouth to the Channel Islands on July 22nd. On July 29th, a body was located by Sussex police at around 9:30 p.m. and it was identified as Ebla Yusuf. Her family have been notified. A family visiting a zoo in East Sussex was lucky enough to see a once-in-a-lifetime birth, according to the park. When Erica Huggins and her family arrived for their first visit to Drusilla's Park by Alfriston, they hoped to be lucky enough to catch a glimpse of the sloths, but what happened far exceeded their expectations as they witnessed a birth. On August 23rd, Mrs. Huggins, her husband and their 2 children were exploring the zoo's walk-through enclosure when the ex-veterinary nurse noticed the glistening while admiring the sloths and was quick to pull out her camera to capture the amazing moment. Sloths' pregnancies are difficult to predict due to their anatomy and their abdomen swelling to a minimum, so keepers at Drusilla's have not themselves witnessed a sloth being born before. The new arrival is especially precious to the team as they suddenly lost their infant sloth Athena at just 6 months old last year. Now let's hear from sports reporter Sam Morton as he tells us a bit more about Brighton's emphatic 3-1 win at Old Trafford over the weekend. I've got sports reporter Sam Morton with me here, and we're going to be talking a bit more about Brighton's amazing win at Old Trafford over the weekend. So obviously you were there, Sam. What did you make of Brighton's performance?
It was absolutely incredible, really. Just Brighton continuing where they left off against Newcastle. And it was with several changes as well. 6 changes were made by De Zerbi, and it was a big surprise when we saw the team line-up come out. We knew that there was maybe some fatigue from players that had been quite far distances, obviously, during the international break. So some of the changes were expected, but the absence of Solly March was a surprise. It turns out he had a bit of a knock. He wasn't in the squad at all. So it gave opportunities for a number of different players really to really impress, and they couldn't have really done a much better job, really. I think Man United started the game on top. It looked like they might take the lead in those first 15 minutes. But what Brighton is so good at is reacting to how the other team is playing. And they really did completely change the way they were playing to kind of counter Man United's fast start. And they completely played through with some incredible passing and took the lead through Danny Welbeck against his old club again. He can't stop scoring against Man United. And it was kind of exactly what they needed, and it kind of put Man United on the back foot, and Brighton really never looked back from there.
And there's been a lot of criticism of Manchester United over how they played, but how good were Brighton?
Amazing, really. Just the way they play, and with the players they've got in the team, it's incredible, really. I think there was obviously a lot of talk about the difference between the transfer value of the team, Brighton team, compared to Man United. I think Brighton's team was worth less than 17 million, and Man United, I think 2 players added to about 120 million. So it's incredible, really, what De Zerbi's doing with Brighton. It doesn't seem to matter who's in the team. He can play in exactly the same way, and teams just can't handle it. And to have a bench as strong as they did is something else as well. Like Ansu Fati, Evan Ferguson, Carlos Baliba, Billy Gilmore. It's just incredible, really. And that's not even to mention Eastbourne and Solly March as well. So, yeah, an incredible performance. And you say, obviously, Man United are not at the best at the moment. They really are struggling on and off the pitch. Everything that can go wrong is going wrong for really at Man United at the moment, and it's difficult to see how they're going to improve. With so many injuries as well, and so many players unavailable, it's a bit of a rocky time for them. But Brighton took full advantage, and they've got such superiority over United really in recent years. I think last season they beat them home and away in the league. Obviously they lost in the FA Cup semi-final, quarter-final on penalties. But it's just an incredible way they've kind of built the team over the last few years. And Man United obviously are struggling, and they've really continued to make life hard for them every time they play. Man United know if they're going to play Brighton, they're going to be in for a really tough game.
Yeah, and I think that's something we've seen from Brighton every game this season, bar the West Ham game, and even that one. If Areola didn't have the match of his life, then maybe Brighton would have won, and then it would have been a 100% win record in the Premier League. And I've seen some Brighton fans on social media joking that they're title contenders. Obviously, that's maybe a bit far-fetched, but how far do you see Brighton going if they keep this squad and keep this manager until May?
The sky's the limit, really. I think we were talking on Saturday that they even could potentially be in a title race this season, which is crazy to say. I did actually ask De Zerbi, are they in a top 4 race? And he said it's far too early to say that after just 5 games, which you kind of expect. You don't want him to set too high targets, but he is someone who does like to set targets, and he always does reference the target, without actually revealing what it is. But he, I'm sure, will have the highest aspirations possible, and why not, really? When you see the way they're playing, apart from Man City, I think you can't name any other team in the country that can play the way they do, can dominate the ball the way they do. And it's incredible, really. It doesn't matter who's on the pitch, then everyone knows exactly their roles. And we've heard it so many times about players talking so highly about De Zerbi, and even James Milner, after the Newcastle game, he's played with some of the biggest managers in the world over a really long career, and even he was gushing really about De Zerbi and the impact that he's had, and he's learning new things all the time. So I think to have a manager of that class and that ability is incredible for Brighton, and you just really hope they can keep hold of him for as long as possible.
Definitely. That's everything from part one. Make sure you tune into part two, as we'll be talking a bit more about Brighton's upcoming fixture against AEK Athens in the Europa League, as well as their Premier League game at home against Bournemouth. That is everything from part one. Make sure you tune into part two, as we'll be speaking a bit more about Brighton's first ever European game. Welcome back to part two of the latest TV news. I've got Sam Morton still with me here, and we're going to be talking about AEK Athens. So this is happening on Thursday. This is going to be Brighton's first ever European game. How exciting is it?
Massively exciting. I think it's one of the biggest games in the club's history, and it's an incredible occasion that the fans will be revelling in. Really, just so much excitement, and they're going into the game in such good form as well that I think everything is so positive, and you just really hope they kick off their first European campaign with a win.
Yeah, and it's a bit surreal, really. I mean, both of us have lived in Sussex for a few years now. Your whole life. We've seen Brighton in the Championship, and now, we've seen them fighting relegation in the Premier League just a couple of years ago, and now they're, like you said, in the first half, they could potentially be title contenders, and now they're playing a European competition where I would say they're probably in the top 5 teams in the Europa League at the moment. Yeah, it's incredible, really. I think when you look at the players they have at their disposal, they really could go anywhere they want, really, in the competition, you feel. Yeah. There's so much kind of talent in that squad, and they've got one of the best managers at the moment in Europe that I'm sure most clubs in Europe would love to have at the club as well. So I think they really, really can shock a few people again in Europe, and what a great way to do it in the group they've got as well. Obviously starting with Athens, and then they've also got to play Ajax and Marseille, and even if they were just to get through that group, then that really does highlight their credentials. But as you say, the journey they've been on from League One only about 10 years ago, it's amazing, really. It's amazing the journey they've been on, and it's hard to believe, I think, that they're in the position they are now. But being in the competition has allowed them to attract some big names. We've seen Ansu Fati come in, and he made his debut against Man United at the weekend, and I saw glimpses of what he can do. It was a shame that he didn't tuck away that chance that he had in the last couple of minutes. Obviously denied by a great save, but I think he'll definitely be looking to start and really show the world really what he can do. Obviously he fell down the pecking order a bit at Barcelona, and has obviously ended up at Brighton now, but the perfect place to show the world what he can do and really make a name for himself again. Yeah, and I guess it's quite ironic, really, because Brighton have signed Barcelona's number 10, youngest goal scorer in their history, youngest goal scorer in the Spanish national team history, and yet going to Brighton doesn't necessarily feel like a backward step, does it, in his career?
No, well, it seems to be the perfect place to play, really, at the moment. I think so many players must be looking at Brighton as being the kind of the total football kind of way that maybe Barcelona are kind of play as well, without going too drastic. But I think to be playing the football they are in the Premier League, which is considered to be one of the toughest leagues in Europe, if not the toughest, then it's kind of speaks volumes, really. And Brighton are such a good club to be at, such a good club to learn your football at, and that's why I think people are trying to get Evan Ferguson to stay there for as long as possible, because we've seen players jump to bigger clubs too soon. I think we've seen that. I think obviously East Basuma is now really starting to make a name for himself under Ange Postecoglou at Spurs. But I think we have seen there have been times that they could have maybe stayed at Brighton for another year or two, played under De Zerbi, and they could improve their game even more. So I think the longer Brighton are at the top of the game, the longer they're surprising people, I think the more maybe the chance they can keep players a bit longer.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've seen it from a few clubs over the years, Everton, Wolves, West Ham, Leicester, teams that are getting into Europe every now and then. You do see that calibre of player they attract is completely different, and also you need that depth as well going into European competition, and there's a lot of players in this Brighton team who've never played in Europe before. How difficult do you think it's going to be for them playing Thursday, Sunday, because it's a lot of football and a lot of rotation, and some players don't like being rotated? How do you think that's going to go down? Yeah,
no, I think if you were asking me this last season, I would have been a bit concerned, because I think that was something that Brighton did struggle with, and it seemed like they were playing the same team every week. Even when the fixture list got crazy towards the end of the season, we were still seeing the same names. Like how Lewis Dunk was still standing up by the end of the season, I don't know. But I think this season it's such a different story. You saw against Man United, 6 changes, nothing changed in the performance. They backed up the win at Newcastle with another convincing win at Old Trafford. And they were able to bring on some players late on, like Ansu Fati, Evan Ferguson. And to be able to do that is incredible, really, to beat Man United with their almost B team and bring on some superstar names who will all now be fresh for Thursday. I think if they keep managing to do that and not affect their playing style and not affect the performances, I think, yeah, it's an incredible position to be in. But as you say, players that haven't played in Europe before, so it'll be interesting to see how they get on. But they strike me as the kind of club that won't change, and Serbia strikes me as the type of man that won't change his performance, his way of playing against these European sides, and I think it'll be really exciting to see.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, bringing our attention back to the Athens game, it's a tough group, as we've talked about before. Ajax, Marseille, AEK Athens. Do you see Brighton going through there?
As I say, I think it's definitely possible. I think if they're going to go to Old Trafford and convincingly win, convincingly beat Newcastle the week before that, why not, I guess. I think Ajax haven't had their best starts of the season. I think the form at home will be the crucial factor. I think if they can win their games at home and maybe pick up a point here and there away, or even more than that, I think they're more than capable of getting through the group. And if they do, then who knows where they can end up. I think it's the perfect competition for Brighton to be in, really. Yeah, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how they get on.
Yeah, same. It would be really exciting. And like you said, you need to win your home games. And more importantly, AEK Athens at home, that's arguably going to be your easiest game of the group. How important is it that they win and get the points on the board early?
Yeah, massively important. And to have, as I say, those players fresh from the weekend. Ferguson, I assume, will start. Ansu Fati, I think, will start. Might even be a first start for Carlos Baleba as well. Gilmour will be fresh coming back in. I think they're going to have so many of their top players so fresh for this game. As you say, probably against the supposed weaker side in the group. But maybe a bit of an unknown. You might not know what they could maybe pose in terms of problems for Brighton. But I think, yeah, they are in the best position possible to start off with a win. I think, as you say, it's such an important first game to get the 3 points and ease any nerves.
And obviously, looking ahead to Sunday, we've got Bournemouth at home. How do you see that game playing out?
Always a tough game against Bournemouth. They never roll over easily. I think they're obviously still looking for the first win. But yeah, expecting a tough game. But I expect with Brighton in the form they're in to be able to win that one, I would say. But yeah, as I say, I don't think it will be as comfortable as you might expect. I think, yeah, Bournemouth do like to make things difficult. So we'll see how that one plays out.
Yeah, it'll be tough. And obviously, Dominic Solanke, he's just signed a new contract. Yeah. And, he'll be looking to kind of put his name out there. And, yeah, there's a couple of players on that Bournemouth team who are looking to make a name for themselves. Was he the manager as well? He's looking out there, first win, a lot of expectation coming from Rayo Vallecano. Yeah. And do you think that's going to be an added pressure for Bournemouth going into the game, that it's yet another game without 3 points on the board?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's obviously one of the worst places to go if you're still looking for that first win away at Brighton. But you never know in the Premier League, do you? You can throw out some surprise results. So I think Brighton need to be at their best, not to take anything for granted. And if they do come away on Thursday night with a win, you kind of hope they're not too much on the high to kind of almost forget how difficult it would be to win on Sunday. But Serbia definitely wouldn't allow that. And James Milner was speaking after the Newcastle game. They obviously are taking one game at a time. They're not getting too excited by the prospect of Europe, and they'll be taking these Premier League games very seriously, and we'll be taking them as important as each other.
Yeah, and I think I completely agree with you there. I think Bournemouth will be a lot tougher than a lot of people expect it to be. Obviously, Bournemouth got a draw against Chelsea. Obviously, looking at how Chelsea are this season, not too much of an accomplishment, but they'll be seeing that as a huge point. And they've been playing some good football. They got a relatively late equaliser against West Ham. I think it'll be quite tough, and they're a team that wants to be possession-based. But as we've seen in the past, De Zerbi almost prefers playing against teams who want to have possession and like to counteract that, because when they face teams like West Ham and Everton who have sat back and let them have the ball, they've kind of become a bit stuck, haven't they?
Yeah, no, 100%. And I think that's something that Bournemouth obviously are great at in the league is kind of hanging on in there and maybe nicking the point like they did against West Ham and obviously Chelsea as well. So you really can't take anything for granted with them. They obviously are a battling side and have been in the Premier League for a number of years now. So they're still there for a reason, and we're looking to keep their place in the league. I think they did really well last season as well, and just looking to follow that up with a kind of maybe a higher finish in the league, and we'll be looking to get another scalp at Brighton, and that's what it would be. I think now is to get a point at the Amex would be a great result for them. So yeah, no, I think it'd be a good game.
And if we cast our eyes towards the goal, who do you see going in goal for the AEK Athens game and the Bournemouth game? Obviously that's went back to Jason Steele for the Manchester United game. What do you think is going to go on?
It's almost impossible to predict, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think after the West Ham game, when Verbruggen obviously conceded 3 times, I maybe expected Jason Steele to take his place back in team against Newcastle, and that didn't happen. And Verbruggen stayed in the team. But then after they won that game, then Jason Steele was put back in for the Old Trafford game. So it's a strange one. It's completely impossible to predict. I mean, the air of unpredictability for the opposition as well. They're really not knowing what goalkeeper they're going to come up against. So yeah, I couldn't really tell you who's going to play in goal. But if you're looking at it from the point of view that he's played Verbruggen twice in a row, maybe I think he probably plays Steele for a second time on Thursday night potentially, or we might see it as that Jason Steele played on Saturday and now he'll go with Verbruggen on Thursday. But he was asked about it on Saturday, what his plan is for the goalkeepers, and he said it isn't going to be a case that one plays in the Premier League, one plays in Europe, because he said it's not fair on either of them, because he said Jason Steele helped Brighton get into the Europa League, so he deserves to play in the Europa League, and Verbruggen signed for Brighton knowing that they're in.
If you'd like to read more stories, both news and sport, from across the county, make sure to visit Sussex World online.